Agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, and there's a full complement of 9 members. Councillor Jeff Rutland is substituting for Councillor Morag Everton, who is unwell.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable peculiar interest as interest other than peculiar interest, as defined under the Seaport Town Council Code of Conduct and Business Act 2011 in relation to matter on the agenda. Councillor Ward.
Yeah, LW/21/0373 Newhaven Seaford Sailing Club. The applicant is also a Conservative District Councillor, so obviously I do know her.
Yes, I would like to declare as well, please, Chair.
And that same applies to myself.
Oh,
Yeah.
in case that applies to me too.
And me, I didn't know.
I didn't realise that.
District.
Ah, right.
District.
I didn't know who that two was.
I don't think the rules are so tight that they would stop you participating in the debate, but obviously
I declared last time as
yeah,
well.
you pointed out the sort of relationship, but it doesn't prevent you from taking part in consideration of the application.
Thank you.
It's just a noted.
Yeah, just for something to be noted, yeah.
And I've got another 2 Furl Drive, I know Mr. and Mrs. Ruth.
Will you be taking part in the debate? I mean, are they close friends? Or?
No, we send them Christmas cards.
Oh, I see.
That's about it.
Probably best if you don't speak or vote then. I
Yeah.
thought, but you know, that's just for that application. That's the very first application, 0644. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, public participation. To deal with any questions or brief representations from members of the public physically in the meeting room in accordance with relevant legislation and Seaport Town Council policy. In accordance with Town Council policy, members of the public wishing to speak on individual planning applications may do so immediately before each planning application. So any non-planning applications at the moment? No? Thank you. And we move on to agenda item 4, planning applications. Received week commencing Monday the 16th of August. LW/21/0644, 2 Furl Drive, single storey rear extension with roof terrace. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Councillor.
Yeah, it seems straightforward, but it's this roof terrace, and we seem to be bumping into districts when it comes to this sort of thing, you know.
This is slightly different because it's the extension or a modification of an existing roof terrace. I think the existing terrace has got wooden rails, and this is sort of modernising it and adding a similar sort of extension below. So it's not a innovation, which Lewis don't seem to like, you know, on privacy grounds, but it seems to be, the proposal seems to be a sort of clear glass one, so in order to sort of ensure privacy, you might want to suggest you might want to require or ask for a condition for obscure glass to go in there, but as I say, it is a replacement of an existing terrace, so not so sensitive.
I have put down it is slightly larger.
Yeah,
terrace.
slightly larger. Yeah. They seem to be only sensitive about new retrospective terraces or balconies at the back. But this is probably an improvement on the previous design.
Councillor Edson, do you want to make any further comment about obscure grass or?
No, I think, yeah, obscure grass would be, grass would be ideal. That, you know, that might, you know, sway it as far as Lewis planning is concerned.
And are you proposing?
Yeah.
Councillor Honeyman?
Chair,
especially being Muslim again. I think those perspex sort of barriers, as you say, what you just mentioned, they're quite common now for those with the terrace styles in it. And that's probably more the modern look, isn't it? So I would go with that. I'm sure it's probably just had its time, the existing one, since why we did it in the first place. So I'd second that. It's no problem.
Thank you. Any other comments? No?
I'm quite, personally, I'm quite happy with clear because what the location is, it doesn't really impact a lot of neighbours. But if councillors want to go with obscure, then I'll go with obscure.
Well, we could say that if the officers consider that, so there are any privacy concerns,
Yeah.
then, you know, then they would be able to, or recommended to require obscure glass or something like
I'll
that.
find out.
Yeah.
More than happy with that.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
Thank you, that's unanimous, except for Councillor Payne who stood down for that application. Thank you.
LW stroke 21/0496 and 0497 Bishopstone Railway Station. I just want to say, before we debate this one, that I used to have a shop there, Linda Stores, for 40 years, so I do know some history about this building, but I feel I can still comment on it. But I just want that.
Well,
sort of
and I
noted.
think you mentioned we had, it's 7 years ago now since you had any connection with the station. I think it's a long enough gap to enable you to comment quite freely on it.
So, any members of the public like to comment on this application? So open to the committee.
Personally, Chair, I just think we should support it through because it's going to be improvement and an asset to not only Bishopstone but to the neighbourhood in general. Particularly trying to invite more members that come down into using the railway station. I think it's a brilliant idea.
I'll second Councillor Lord said, especially with the letters
Yeah.
support from Sept Community Rail Partnership, lots of different other rail partnerships and historic partnerships that actually totally support.
Any other comment? Councillor Honeyman?
Yes, the Friends of Bishopstone Station were one of the key players of the community railway partnership in that particular station. So, I mean, looking at some of the pictures of the state of the various toilets and the waiting rooms, and it's the whole lot just really needs to be stripped out. I'm trying to be. It's all done in the right sort of. What am I trying to say? Building legs for the time and sympathetically done. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. But a community asset at the end of the day for the area, that part of Sept, the Bishopstone area, would be fantastic. So, yeah, again, please support it.
I've just got a couple of comments. Firstly, I do fully support this because it is going to be a good community hub for the area. But because it's a listed building, the coal hatch they want to replace with the window, and it should be like for like. I mean, it's not going to upset their plans, but I just feel we need to point that out.
So that's the hatch on the far
As you look
right
at
hand
the-
side
that's right.
as you look at the building. Yeah.
It's a good point.
That's which is next to where the shop used to be.
I think when you look at the internal plans, they're looking to use that part as a store, so it's not, necessary really to have a window. No, usually they're quite strict on listed.
Are they sash windows on this building? Are they sash windows?
No, the front of the station is crystal windows.
Crystal ones from the
Yeah.
wall.
And they were replaced, must be about 20 years ago. They had to be light for light, they couldn't do anything else. But the windows in the door, they are, they were originally glass, so, which they're going back to traditional, to the building, so it's no problem. And the other thing is the parquet flooring is original, and I would hate to see that destroyed. Maybe that could be saved in some way.
Yeah, well, we can mention that, it shows that we've given
Sure,
a good
may I
consideration.
make a suggestion? We did something very similar when I was working in Brighton. I had tiles on the wall, we were referred to as large box and fast, and the original Victorian tiles. And what we did, obviously the walls are different from us, put a lining paper over the tiles, then decorated the actual staircases. So in future, when we came down, we could take the lining paper off. And can we not suggest that we put some kind of like a membrane
I
over
think the only problem is because the floor is on 2 levels, and the way the parquet flooring is on the upper level. And I think they want to flatten it.
They want to let it all off. I know they want to do, but like I say, the parquet flooring. But can we not suggest that the parquet floor is lifted and it should be recycled?
Yeah, what we can ask.
Yeah. It's a contraction. We'll get. We can lift and recycle it. At least we know it's gone to a good floor somewhere.
It's not an objection, it's just a suggestion.
Yeah.
There's also a complaint, well, not a
I was
complaint.
just going to say that.
I'll let you get on with it.
There was one letter which is neutral. I think they are supported, but they've just got problems with parking. There is restricted parking in Station Road, but as it's got good access by bus and train,
Fully accessible by train.
Yeah.
so and I think the
That's no more chance, eh?
and I think the group, Friends of Bishop South Station, are encouraging people to use public transport or so that's the pain.
Is there any cost to us, because it's going to be a community asset, will it suddenly come onto the town council to pay for upkeep or the toilets cleaning and do it?
Network Rail are sort of promoting it, they're acknowledging that it's a listed building, it's their responsibility and they're the driving force along with other groups to get it. So I mean, partly because they have to, because it's a listed building, but I'm sure that they should be congratulated on that.
Okay, unless there's any other comments, we'll take it to vote. So can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously, thank you.
LW/21/0495 44 Halters Road. Loft conversion including front and rear dormer. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Like to lead on this one, Councillor Boardman?
I'd like to support this. There's other properties, next door neighbours, which is part of the semi-detached property, has already got a roof dormer. The next door neighbours have as well. So actually, this would balance the building out by putting a front dormer on. So I'm supporting it.
Councillor Fine, second.
I'll second that.
Any other comments? Can I have a show of hands for supporting this application?
That's unanimous. I hope members weren't too worried when they saw Homefield Road on the agenda.
I did shake a little.
Always there.
LW/21/0485 13 Broad Street. Proposed flue extraction pipe at first floor level to rear of commercial property. Members of the public like to comment? Over to the committee. Councillor Bourne?
I just looked at it, it was fine, it goes above the roof. Did notice he'd gone into quite some detail on the filtration system. I wonder if we could sort of have a look at that as part of it for the toilet. For the cafe.
Yeah.
That was my only comment.
Keep a mental note.
Yeah.
Councillor Bourne?
In some ways, yes, I'm quite happy to support this. Obviously, it's needed for the restaurant, but my only concern is because it goes up past 2 flats right by their windows, what is the noise level going to be like for those residents? So that is my only concern, that there could be continuous noise issues for the residents in the flats above.
Very true.
Yeah,
Yes, I noted on the list of documents on the website, there's a recent exchange of emails with environmental health, because in this case, the advice from environmental health is probably the main part of the consideration of the application, because the appearance is pretty harmless. Initially, I think the planning officer consulted the air quality officer, and the air quality officer passed it on to the section that deals with food hygiene and noise nuisance, because it's more relevant to them, and there's been no response. But I think in this sort of case, it's a bit like when there's a new development with highway implications, the highway authorities' comments carry quite a bit of weight, and in this case the environmental health comments will carry quite a bit of weight. So I think if you do generally support it regarding appearance, then I still think it's best to put a proviso on any response, and that it should be subject to any concerns regarding noise nuisance to the residents on the first and second floor, and sort of request the planning officer to have due consideration to that before making a decision, because as I say, the appearance of it is really only a minor point. It's really the effect it has on those flats. So if you are minded to go along with it on appearance, I'd suggest you put that proviso in to sort of safeguard the residents' interests. And
Councillor Payne, are you happy to do that? To support them?
As said, Chair, I've actually done something very similar to this at work, and the constraints imposed by environmental health are so strict with regards to noise and emissions, and with regards to fire as well. I think you should support it with conditions, as Jeff said, with environmental health, because they're so tight on it, they really are.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Your secretary, Councillor Bond. So, Councillor Hunter.
I mean, when you say restrict, typically are they time limited then, possibly, or different? Is that the principal factor? So that's the
Okay. So, can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
subject to that proviso, that's unanimously supported, subject to environmental comments.
LW/21/0659, 14 Keydale Road, erection of front open porch. You know, does the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Councillor Lee?
Might not be particularly in keeping with the house, but I think it was quite aesthetic. I don't know how everyone else feels. It seems a nice addition to me. Yes.
Just get open to.
I would support it.
Does that find a seconder?
Just
Councillor Payne? Any
Chair,
other
I just
comments?
wanted to raise a point.
Yes.
It sticks out from what appears to be the building line on the block plans. I mean, is that irrelevant?
Yeah, well, that's why it needs permission. But
Oh, I see.
there's one already there. It's sort of it's twice the size of the one that's already there. There's already a sort of a precedent to come out in front. This is just to sort of build on that, and in a way, the wood doesn't sort of match the style of the house. But because there was a porch already there, I think it would be very difficult to oppose it. It's just a slightly bigger version of the existing one.
Just one thing, Chair, it's a non-habitable room as well, so we have difficulty to actually stay where we don't really want it.
Yeah. If it was in a conservation area or something, that'd be different. You can put more weight on the appearance, or even an area of established character, but it isn't in any designated area. So.
Thank you. I mean, most types of wood they'd use would be a dark grey anyway, wouldn't they? So, and then they are that road porches. So as long as it's in that style, that'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Can I have a show of hands supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously. Thank you.
LW/21/0502, 32A High Street. Advertisement consent application for the illuminated retro Barbers pole in keeping with the industrial era and time of the street. Any members of the public like to comment on this?
Well, I should declare I have my uncle though, but never mind.
Bearing in mind this is in a conservation area, so who would like to lead on this one?
Yeah, I noticed that there's no other illuminated signs in that street there. I mean, you know, their pictures are old.
Yeah.
But I don't recollect seeing an illuminated sign in that street.
I was going to say that in the industrial area, you didn't have illuminated signs. You had the pole, and they were brightly coloured. You didn't have illuminated, so the two comments you go against each other.
It's a sort of modern version of the old Barbers sign, isn't it? You see the
Sergeant Barber.
But you can't.
Not that I take a lot of interest in barbers myself, but you know, you see them quite a bit, you know, around. I don't think they're that obtrusive.
Councillor Bond.
Yeah, I'm actually quite happy to support this, but I would put a restriction on when it's lit, so it's literally only lit during opening hours and not the rest of the time. Because the barber's pole is a traditional thing for barbers. He is a traditional barber from what I've been told, so actually it would be in keeping with fitting for him to have it, but restrict the time. It's only when his shop is open that it's lit.
Good point.
Very good point.
And it's not very big either.
No.
It's not intrusive. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hanlon. Any other comments? So can I have a show of hands to support this application with the time?
Subject to that proviso, yeah. That's unanimously supported. Thank you.
LW/21/0626, 8 Halters Wide, single storey rear extension and 2-storey side extension.
Evening all. Just came along to answer any questions you might have about it, but also put it into context a little bit. So our 7-year-old has Down syndrome and some associated delays and needs, and we have turned over sections of the house to sensory needs and therapy, and as a consequence our house is full of those requirements. So the plan is to create a dedicated sensory and therapy room on the ground floor with an additional shower room for post-messy play and things like that. And then additional breakout space and an extra bedroom upstairs, which will accommodate Sam for the future. Realistically, we know he'll be with us longer than our other child, so it's to accommodate him in the future, give him his own bedroom living space, microwave if we're trusted. So it's just much we can never future-proof everything. It's just to try and mitigate his needs in the future. With lockdown, COVID, everything that's happened in the last couple of years, we've lost a lot of our therapy from the NHS and other support. Fortunately, my wife is a primary school teacher with some SEN training, so she's taken on herself to do the vast majority of that at home. So we just need that extra space to accommodate his needs and help him progress, give him the best sort of chance he can. But I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
How old is your boy now?
He's 7 at the moment, just turned 7.
Excellent.
He's got a 3-year-old brother who's keeps him on his toes. Yeah. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions while you discuss, I'm happy to answer anything.
No, it's not.
I appreciate it's not all about my needs as well. We've looked at the area that up on North Way. There have been very similar extensions, and on Princess Drive as well. There have been very similar ones. Some 2-storey on each side. One is particularly impressive. We've considered things like right of light for the property to the west, and the risk of terracing, because we are planning to build up to the boundary. Because the house to the west is set back and askew, the risk of terracing is quite reduced. They would have to do a significant development and come forward in front of the property line to even reach that, which we think would be unrealistic. We appreciate opposite there was a granted planning permission for another house. That's unlikely to happen where we are because we own enough of the plot to stop them putting one in. It's not wide enough to add another house. So the risk of terracing in that front is reduced. The risk of intrusion of light is fairly reduced. The only window on that side of their house is on their stairwell. We're hoping the architect's worked it out so they wouldn't encroach too much on light anyway. We've spoken to them, they're happy with the plans that we've had drafted. If they've made any comments on the system yet. That's about it. So, if anyone's got any questions.
You made an application about extending the fence to enclose the garden.
Yes.
And you finally got to the stage where you were putting it level with the building line. Has that worked okay?
It has. So yeah, we originally hoped to bring it about 300 mil adjacent to the highway.
Yeah.
That was turned down. I found a piece of case law that said, because there's no definition of what's adjacent, which is frustrating. A judge decided that anything over a metre wasn't adjacent to, so we've gone to 1100, and we have extended. So the space that we have regained in the rear garden, we're sort of losing again with this development. But so that way we're not losing, because he does a lot of outdoor play with trampoline and paddling pool. So we're sort of giving with one hand, taking with the other effectively.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do appreciate that, thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Right, open to the committee. To lead on this one. Councillor Payne.
Just think straight, yeah. Absolutely, just fully support it.
Right. And that's your proposal?
Yeah.
Like I said, Chair, it is what it is,
Yeah.
and what it is what you're going to get. And I know you've had to mess about with regards to the building and etc. And just wish you and your family all the very best.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments? No? So can I have a show of hands who's supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously.
Thank you.
Yep.
Right, LW/21/0653 46 Kingsmeade Road, first floor front extension. I might as well go straight through if you have
That's
any
me done.
more comments. Okay. Okay, so open to the committee. Read on this one. Councillor Law.
Well, Chair, it is what it is. It is exactly what it is. It's a front extension. I've got no qualms with it. It's in keeping the area, and I support it. I can't see why we can't.
Is that fine to second that? Who's first?
Yeah.
Councillor Rattler this time.
Councillor.
Any other comments? Can I have a show of hands in support of this application?
That's supported unanimously.
Right, planning applications were received in the week commencing Monday the 23rd of August. LW/21/0373 Newhaven and Seaford Sailing Club. Retrospective planning permission for a temporary prefabricated wooden cabin for the provision of hot and snacks. Open to the committee. Councillor Mead.
This is the hut that we were actually debating and planning issue of the signage on it, wasn't it? I can't understand why we actually debated signage on it before we even had planning permission for the building to be there in the first place.
Well, if you
Briefly, shall I explain? It's a bit confusing actually. Yeah, there were two applications submitted. This one for retrospective consent for retaining the cabin or shed with a connected advertisement application under 0374, this is 0373, for the painted sign on the shed, which, although it's on the building, needs separate consent because it's classed as an advert sign, and the A-boards on the prom which help to indicate where the shed is and everything. But when the applications were received, the details of the shed and the details of 0373 were put on both 0373 and 0374. And I contacted the case officer a few days ago, or she finally got in contact with me a few days ago and apologised for the confusion and has said that, you know, I put this on because obviously this is the right application. This is the application to retain the shed with the details of the shed on it. The other one is still on the website, still got details of the shed on rather than details of the advertisement. But in the next few days that should be put right because she's acknowledged the mistake. And I said, well, isn't there a problem with the delay? You know, because we can't consider it now until September the 30th, assuming the advert details are going to go on there. She said, well, she's away until early October from the middle of next week. So she said there's no hurry as far as she's concerned. So I will try and make sure that the advert details go on 0374 in the next few days before she goes away, and then it will be ready for consideration at the next meeting on the 30th. I mean, it's a very minor thing, really, relatively minor, but there are two separate applications for retrospective consent for the shed and advert for consent for the adverts.
Do you want to reply on that? No. So I've got Councillor Payne.
You won't know the answer. You go first. I was going to ask a question.
So was I.
I just wondered how temporary is temporary?
That was my question.
Because if it's going to close at the end of the month, by the time we get permission, it'll gone down.
It's open to us to suggest how temporary it should be. They just asked, I think they've acknowledged that given the type of building it is, it's going to be temporary.
Yeah.
So we can suggest how long the consent, if you are minded to give consent for the shed, how long that consent should last, because it obviously should be temporary because it's not a permanent building. And it will get tatty, you know, it could get tatty, being exposed as it where it is. There's not many, it couldn't be more exposed really. You know, maybe two years or something like that. That's what I would suggest, but it's up to you to decide.
So it's linked to the restaurant and the cafe,
Sailing.
the Sycamore Club. But it's about 10 yards down the road, isn't it? 20 yards down the road. I'm missing something. Why have they put a tent up there?
Sort of casual, just
Oh, right.
stop
So
off, as the sailing club is more to go in and eat
I see, right.
sort of a menu of food.
Okay.
Yes, and the sailing club sometimes open to members only,
Yeah.
but it means they've still got the
Yeah.
kiosks there to serve members
Oh,
of the
right,
public.
brilliant. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it probably was, but I thought I should also close the board.
Okay, so Councillor Lord.
That was my question as well.
Right. Councillor Hammond, is there
I
something?
still think that it shouldn't really be out there in the winter, to be honest, in the peak of the winter. But then I suppose you're going to argue you're going to get bright days in the winter. But when there's a storm there, I mean, it's really going to get the elements there. That's my only crutch about the winter months. But then you could argue about the same with some of the STC concessions as well. So
Very much so.
I'd say sort of an hours go away, don't they, most of the hours?
I mean, it has done.
But I suppose it's not up to, we don't really worry too much about it, if we don't own that building as such, and does it matter?
It's up to them.
It has done 2 winters.
Yeah, it's up to them to decide really, unless you think it's bound to be an eyesore. If it's not bound to sort of deteriorate that much in the winter, they may decide to take it down in the winter, but it's really up to them.
Councillor Edson.
Yeah, I overlooked that shed, and I think that the writing is in good taste, and I would support that. And they do get quite a lot of people around there, all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy to see it there for as long as it stays up.
I mean, my personal comment was when it first was put there, it was just the bare wood and it really stuck out like a sore finger. But now it's painted like a beach colour, you know, fit for the promenade. It blends in quite well. Councillor Lawson.
Just one thing, Chair. I support this 100%, and I think should give it basically unlimited period, providing it's maintained in keeping with the environment. So that means probably after 5 years, the shot to bits will have to be replaced because the corners of the shed where it's exposed to the environment will actually be quite severely blown away because basically where it's now, it's in basically shot blasted every day with the wind and whatnot. So I think we should give it it's an unlimited concession provided it's maintained. I think we should put the onus on the Sept Town Council to carry out a yearly inspection on it to ensure that Sept Town Council are happy with the fact that the concession is maintained in keeping with the environment. And if it's not, then we say, okay, I'm afraid it needs to be replaced or maintained. That's the only condition I can say about it, because I fully support it. I think it's something at the top end, but just if councillors remember, 2 or 3 items ago, we supported getting Bishopstone railway station put back on the map.
Yeah.
When you come to Bishop railway station, the first thing you see is a concession. Well, we can't have one thing after another, so I think we say it's fine, we'll have it, provided Sept Town Council carry out an annual inspection on it. And I think
it's good.
I think it's really, really good. I think that's the way we should go forward for promoting Sept and Bishopstone.
So
agree.
find a seconder.
Mm.
Thank you,
No, I
councillor.
just wanted to make a point.
Yes.
That shed, I don't think is on Seaford Town Council land, is it?
Well,
When people are asking questions when that first went up,
That's the point.
yes, I know. I don't think it is, because otherwise they would have had to serve a notice on us.
yeah.
But I haven't looked at the application form to see what it says about land ownership, but I see. So, I see. Yeah, so I don't know who it is. It's close to land that we own, but not on land that we own.
It could be the Port Authority. Because it goes right up to Buckle, doesn't it? You know.
I mean, Salt and Water, that article as well.
All the port authority stuff has been handed back to Seaford Town Council.
That's it.
Really? Yes, it's probably, it might be leased for the sailing club, you know, it might be an underlease from the sailing club. We don't, I could have a look at the application form, but take a minute or so to get there.
Comes under the same.
When I was the mayor, the port boss handed it back to Seaford Town Council. So that land that they own.
All the Zoe Club members.
Yeah, I remember that, so, but I couldn't work out whereabouts.
Was there, yes.
Through you, Chair, if it's come through Seaford Town Council, the land must belong to us because as we're going to Newhaven Town Council, wouldn't it, Chair?
Or a sailing
No,
club.
oh, the central, well, whoever, the central then must have a land.
Well, yeah, it might be a
So it will only come to us if we have an interest in it. Otherwise, we want to Newhaven or it's
Well,
Newhaven.
at the moment, we're just debating if it
Fine.
should stay there, so,
Sure.
you know, regardless who actually owns
Maintain
the
that, but
land.
it's pretty
We're just
much.
concerned about planning application.
There's just one thing to say about the temporary nature of the building. What Councillor Lord said about, obviously our concern is that it should be properly maintained. It's just that where you've got an application for a temporary building and it's admitted by the applicant that it's temporary, which it is in this case, and it's obviously a temporary building, then I think the district council would want to put, for certainty's sake, would want to put a time limit on there. Even if it was just to review it and give it another 2 years afterwards. I appreciate it that the main concern is the way it looks rather than the fact that it's there. Because we seem to accept the principle that it's there, but we don't want it to start to look tatty or anything like that. But I think for certainty the district council would want to put some sort of time limit on it. I'm not saying that we can't suggest what we're suggesting, but I think that's what will happen if they're minded that grant consent on it.
So councillor Lord, would you be happy to
Yes.
agree?
Through you, Chair, yes.
Say put 2 years
Through you, Chair, yes.
onto it?
Yeah.
There's no information about ownership.
No, I don't think that.
No, it's not town council anyway. But we
Okay.
don't know who it is.
So if we support it, but, review
That's supported unanimously. Thank you.
LW/21/0619 53 Kingsmeade, two-storey rear extension. Who would like to lead on this one? Councillor Borman?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm quite happy to support this extension. It fits the plot quite nicely, so I fully support it.
Chair, I would second that as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. Just that there was one letter online, it was neutral, just concerns over the drainage, but that is not really our concern, so can I have a show of hands of support?
That's
this
supported
application?
unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. LW/21/0661 Camberley 43 Furl Road, single storey rear and front extensions, two-storey side extension. Let's lead on this one. Councillor Borman.
Oh my goodness. This is a huge extension. It's more than doubles the size of the original house, so it's not a subservient extension because it goes forward of the front of the property rather than sitting back. It then, on the rear extension, then sits further back from that. It's overdevelopment of the site. It's definitely not subservient to extension, and I'd like to refuse it, please.
Says your job.
It's in an area of existing character as well, which
Yeah.
it means it's in a designated area, so additional sort of
I can't never
controls.
work out where the conservation area is down Furl Road, where it ends.
Yeah,
No,
it's,
it does.
yeah, I always look on the
It does
conservation
make sense.
outside of conservation area. Right, so you're proposing to refuse it on...
Almost opposite
It's two houses away from the
Can we
town
just...
house.
It's two.
Sorry.
I just wondered if there was like a function around it's got the chatting station.
Councillor Borman, you're proposing to refuse this on the grounds of...
Overdevelopment, not subservient, which is what GBO3.
Of the design guideline.
Yeah.
Out of scale and character with other properties.
Yeah.
So, detrimental to the area of existing character. The local plan and
Would they then have asked to that 42?
Well, 42.
That's what's going to happen there.
42. This is a property that's been sort of demolished. There's an enforcement problem with it. It's been a very untidy site, but it's got a consent for a large rear extension and side extension, but there must have been some problems with construction. It's been demolished, and it's opposite, or it's in the same general area, and it's slightly up the road, but it's a different style of property really, and it's a separate enforcement case. But it is interesting that these two cases, 42 and 43, are coming up at the same time. But I think there's been a problem with the structure, and the whole house has had to come down.
Well, yeah, because we took the front wall off.
That's right.
They left it there for 2 years.
Yeah, that wouldn't have helped.
Okay, so does that find a seconder? Councillor Lee. Any other comments? No? So can I have a show of hands of objecting to this application?
That's objected to unanimously on the grounds that Councillor Borman mentioned.
Tree applications, TW21/0055/TPO 1 Barn Close, to remove 2 sycamore trees in the garden. I think it's in the rear garden. That's the Borman.
I'd like to object to this actually. Why can't, if they've got issues with the leaves and the guttering and things, why can't they just reduce the height of the tree? Why are they actually removing these trees. And sycamore trees are so much nicer than the landline that they've actually then put up. And they're saying it's disturbing the growth of their land here. But why have they put them right in front of the sycamore trees, which is a bit ridiculous. So I'd actually suggest that we actually object to this. Say we'd support the reduction of height, but not the removal.
Councillor Lord?
Council suggests we suggest 30% crown reduction, so it comes like a lollipop, and then we're achieving both things. We're achieving additional light to the garden. I agree with the landline that I hate them to death, but it's not just my own personal suggestion. If you do a 30% crown reduction, it makes it like a lollipop, and it actually does the tree good as well. Sickly leaves and branches, which it's like a road which is going to be cut back. So I suggest a 30% crown reduction as a suggestion for the members to consider.
So you happy with that? Seconding Councillor Lord. Councillor Lord?
Yes, I'm happy. 30% crown reduction. Actually, it will do the trees good because they need to be cropped.
Any other comments? So can we have a show of hands of objecting to this application that suggests a 30%
Yeah.
reduction?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Councillor Honeyman? That's objected to unanimously.
TW/21/0059/TPO Greenholm Chinkton Lane. Cut back laterals approximately 30%, remove lower branches to allow lorries to unload, reduce height by approximately 30%,
Yeah.
infection pimples on the tree leaves.
I'll propose that to do one.
Councillor?
We haven't been told what species of trees this is.
Yeah, that's true.
I haven't been to look, I'm afraid.
We have a decision soon. It will have to be a hybrid decision. Some was you couldn't tell whether they're because we're hybrid decisions. But multitude.
I think it's strange not to be told what tree species is.
It's unusual.
Yeah, it's also not just an association. I do apologise.
It's spread a lot. Just get into the details.
I noticed.
I looked at it and I reread it and I didn't
Yeah.
see
It's
anything
right.
mentioned.
It's right on a shared, joint access point on the lane. Right.
Sometimes I get skeptical. No, sometimes I think. Sometimes. We don't know, just the way it is.
Holmonk.
Oh, right.
Holmonk. That's an, is that evergreen?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
evergreen,
yeah. So,
So councillor Lord,
yeah,
are you
I'm
proposing?
proposing I'm quite with 30% crown reduction and almost any tree does what power of God.
Is that fine to second that? Thank you,
Yeah,
councillor
to
Lord. Any other
30%.
comments? So can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously.
Thank you.
Sorry, Jeff, what's the name of the tree then? What?
Holm.
Holmonk, yeah.
I think that actually keeps its leaves on.
It does, yeah. Good trees are.
Greenholm.
Yes, that would be the local.
Moving on to agenda item 5, consultation improving bus services on page 7. So, the purpose of the report is to present East Sussex County Council consultation on improving bus services. We've got 2 recommendations.
I did actually fill in the application, but the 2 bits I mentioned were that the X12 doesn't stop anywhere after Sutton Park. And I can see why it doesn't stop at Bishopstone and further, because obviously that's 50. But you can stop at Claremont, because it's still a 30 area, and then pull away to do 50. So I can see why it's not Elder Place, but I just can't see why it doesn't even go to the train station or to Claremont.
I mean, it after the town, it doesn't stop till Newhaven.
But it
It's
stops
not even
everywhere.
Denton.
You know,
Not even Denton.
before the Sutton Place, it stops everywhere. After it gets to Newhaven, it stops everywhere. It's just that, you know, what has Stephen done to the bus company?
Yeah, because it's quite a walk from Downward to the library.
And I know people have been called out mate, to then get another bus back from Newhaven.
I feel it should stop at Bishopstown.
Well, I can see
Or
why it does
even
it.
Hill Rise, one or the other.
I can see why it does it, because it is the 50s, so you start to get the speed up, that's the only part of the road they've got. But if they stopped at Claremont, you know, they can't have gone up to 50 there, and it does give you access, you know, through Beacon Road and to Holy Dip.
Any other
And
comments?
the other one was that the two of the buses stop at Seaford, so anybody, again, from Seaford East gets on a bus, has to change again at Seaford Library to go to Eastbourne, so they're going to get in a cut. You know, it's why would you wait for two buses when by the time you wait for those two buses you'll actually be there in the cut? You know, it's not encouraging people to use their cars at all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Payne. Councillor Farmer?
Yeah, a couple of things. But when you go to Eastbourne Hospital, and many residents do, you have to get two buses, and you have to buy two separate tickets, because you get on the Brighton and Hove one from here to Eastbourne, and then you've got to get a stagecoach bus from Eastbourne into the hospital. But if you actually had just one ticket, and it would make it a lot more, a lot easier for people as well.
Second,
Yes.
the residents complaining about that. Not only does it cost quite a lot if you're, limited means, it takes ages as well by the time you get waiting for another bus. And,
Because when I did it, you get off at the old town and then walk round the corner and then pick up another bus to the hospital. So, yeah, good point. And I think also, you know, the fares are quite high. Doesn't really encourage people to use them.
If they were cheaper, then more people would use them, which means
Councillor Hammond, sorry.
99% sure I did buy a combined ticket from here to go to Heathfield, which used both sets of buses, Brighton Hove and Stagecoach. It was like an all-dayer, so you can do it. Pretty sure you can. So, yeah. You might want to double check that, but I'm pretty sure I did it. Well, I had to go to Heathfield fairly regularly for a few times.
Yeah, and thinking of that, I think the tourist information do an all-day ticket, and I think you can use, get on and get off who you like, for a set price,
I think so.
yeah.
But if you're not aware of it, it's not. But maybe you can make that clearer sometimes. Some of these ticket availabilities, make it a bit more clearer somehow. It's not always obvious what your best deal can be if you go on a bus. Not always.
I use the app. I use the app for Brighton Hove on buses. So then I'd have to then purchase another ticket on Stagecoach. Unless they started doing.
Unless they get together, isn't it? It's almost like
That's it.
the provider's got to get together on those apps and stuff, and that's another ball game, another issue, isn't it? In a lot of ways.
Any other,
Is that your proposal?
any other comments?
I think that's one of the things. It was zero emission buses. Now, I presume they mean hydrogen buses, because at the moment we've got hybrid, haven't we? The blue buses are hybrid, but I'm told that they're considerably lower in power than the red and cream. So when those red and cream buses can scoot up the hill at Exie, the blue ones tend to labour a bit because their engines are that much smaller. So
Enjoy the view.
well, you could do. I suppose I would
It's
because
still faster than the cyclist.
I was going to say, it's moving in and out of the bus.
yeah, but is that something that they would look into? You know, like hydrogen buses. It's a considerable cost.
Being on the bus going to Eastbourne, I've never noticed them struggling any more than the red and cream buses.
Yeah, that's because the truth is hidden from you. But,
It all depends if you're on it or you're behind it.
but apparently that's a problem that they've got. They've got slightly smaller engines, and most of their power goes into the hybrid system.
You can suggest encouraging the use of hydrogen buses, there's not really wrong in it.
No?
Electric buses.
Well, the current ones are electric, aren't they, the blue ones? Are they electric?
Well, as I understand it,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
are hybrid. You know, I would imagine they don't get the chance to use that hybrid system trying to chuck up that hill, because you know I've got a hybrid car and it, you know, when you put it under strain, the engine cuts in, you know, every time. So it's better buses only a big all round. It's all right.
The 120 bus, Bishopstone,
The local bus.
yeah,
Cookney, is that Cookney?
yeah. Well, no, it's Compass on Saturday afternoon. It's Cookney, you know, Monday to Saturday morning, then Compass take over. Well, they are struggling to get up onto Hall Park Road, Hill and Hall Park Road, and a lot of the drivers will leave it out on the Saturday afternoon
Is it because of parking?
because of the parking. They can't get through because the Compass buses are wider than the Cookmere, and a lot of the residents up there, you know, are not very happy about it. You know, a lot of them, you know, they have to go out for Saturday lunch and can't get back because they can't get up, you know, walk up the hill.
So they're leaving that out the route.
Well, why can't it, you know, be the Cookmere buses Saturday afternoons, so they're doing 6 days, otherwise it's a good service.
There'd be plenty to get there. So I've got the 12X should have at least one more stop in Seaford at Claremont Road and possibly another one at Bishopstone. Too many 12s terminating at Seaford Library, especially in the evening, or is it all day?
All the
All day. So there's not enough, so people who go to East Dean and Eastbourne have to get 2 buses rather than one.
Or they take the car.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But you have to get 2 buses to get to the GGH, and there should be an easier ticketing system. If it's covered by the Rover, then the Rover ticket should be more publicised, should have more publicity. The use of hydrogen buses should be encouraged, and the 120 Bishopstone service, there should be a way of resolving the problem on a Saturday because the wider buses can't get up Hall Park Road because of the parking on both sides of the road, and that there should be a way of using narrower buses to resolve that problem.
And mention of fares, I think somebody said that to encourage more passengers.
Or lower fares.
No, yes, yeah. If fares were lower, more people would use public transport.
Incidentally, the Cookmere buses, their drivers are all volunteers,
Yes,
and the 120 is their most successful route. So I don't know why. Maybe they can't get the drivers for the weekends.
I don't know, it's,
Well, I mentioned it's the most successful
Yeah.
route.
it is a very good service they give, and I don't know the reasoning why they can't do Saturday afternoons.
Yeah.
But it's a good, you know, place to, to ask that question. Councillor, I'm sorry.
Sorry, can I just mention that encourage members to do their own response, as Councillor Payne has done, because obviously, you know, that will show a bit of interest in the bus services at least, even if you don't use them. You can always respond on that, the link that's on the in the report.
Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure it's relevant that obviously we're doing it as we're still in the pandemic, so I'm not sure if we're looking at slightly different, what was I saying? We're looking at it when maybe the usage is a bit down anyway, so is this reflecting it pre-pandemic times or in the future, or a bit of both? It doesn't mention the pandemic in any context there. I just wondered if that should be mentioned in any way.
It's getting towards normal, I think.
And not as though it does affect your thinking a little bit, the pandemic, especially on transport use generally, really.
Okay, any other suggestions? No?
No, that's fine.
Can I say something? Just
Yes.
people might be interested to know that there is actually a move afoot for a different electric bus service taking the villages on the areas from Lewis. There's a kind of idea to try and get electric bus service so that the villages there are served by bus coming into Newhaven and maybe through to Sept, which would be that's a nice idea.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
But that's nothing to do with this.
No. Right, so got two recommendations which we can take together to forward individual responses to the consultation before the 14th of September, and two, to delegate to the planning officer to submit a response to the survey on the committee's behalf based on comments from the committee at this meeting and subject to email consultation with the committee on the draft response. Okay, can I have a
Do you want me to email everyone before I respond? It's the 14th is next Tuesday.
yeah,
Really,
bit like,
well, the comments are quite straightforward. You know, I just I promise that I'll follow them. There's probably an extra one sort of
Delegate.
bit of correspondence, 2 minutes. So if you want to delete the last for the words from and subject to. So based on the comments of the committee at this meeting, full stop. Is that okay?
okay.
Yes. You can trust me.
Can I have a proposal? Thank you, Councillor Payne. Thank you, Councillor Rutland, for seconding, and can I have a show of hands, please?
That's supported unanimously, thank you.
Right. Agenda item 6, and page 16, updating the committee on decisions made in August by Lewis District Council on applications previously considered by this committee. And you're recommended to note the report unless you've got any questions. I think Jeff has got something
Yes.
further to say.
Something to add that's come up just after the agenda was published, and it was in a report, a report to the South Downs National Park Authorities and the committee, which was held earlier today. And it's to confirm that the consent that was given for the improvement to the coastal defences at Cookmere Cottages, the consent has been quashed by the High Court. It was the consent was given around about April, May, I think, this year, after quite a long controversial processing time, because there were objections from the Sussex Wildlife Trust to the appearance and the nature of the defences, the improved defences. And when consent was given, the Sussex Wildlife Trust challenged the consent in the High Court on the basis that South Downs National Park Authority should have obtained a formal environmental impact assessment prior to determining the application. Given the type of application, it qualified for a special formal environmental impact assessment, and one wasn't required before South Downs made the decision. I think legal advice was taken, and the South Downs Authority agreed voluntarily, probably on the basis of legal advice, to accept the quashing of the decision. They accepted that they were wrong, in other words, and should have obtained this formal assessment, or asked the applicants to supply a formal assessment. So now the situation is back to square one. The High Court have formally quashed the decision without any opposition from the South Downs Authority, and I presume it's really back with the applicants to decide whether they should resubmit the application having obtained an environmental impact assessment, which is obviously quite costly. I don't know exactly how much it would cost, but it's an addition, quite a substantial additional cost if you're, as in this case, the application is a private application rather than supported by a public authority or anything like that. So we don't know what's going to happen, but we do know that the consent has been quashed and the ball is back in the court of the owners of the property to decide how they want to go forward. So, as I say, apologies for the fact there's no report, but it came up on the day the agenda was dispatched, so it's important enough to mention. The only other point I've mentioned on the list of decided applications is draw attention to 21 Cliff Close, where it was a difficult one because there had been consent previously for these alterations to the house, but it was still considered that as that consent had lapsed, that the development had a serious impact on that area of the national park, with the path going up to Sept Golf Club and beyond. And Lewis District Council refused it on the same grounds as our objection. The impact on a particularly sensitive area, there's sort of a gateway, what they call in their adopted local plan, one of the gateways to the South Downs. I said it did help that the South Downs Authority had adopted its local plan in 2019 after the consent had been granted earlier, which had lapsed. So that was a sort of an additional new point which was used by Lewis to justify refusing the application.
It does stop
afterwards.
Yeah, because it was adopted the year after. Yeah, the neighbourhood plan.
A further point to Councillor Gorman on that one.
Absolutely.
So, unless there's any questions on that report, can I ask the committee to note it? Thank you. And that brings the meeting to an end at 12 minutes past 8. Thank you everybody for coming, and safe journey home. It's nice to be home. It's nice to chamber as well.